Welcome. This is Chris Salem, the host of Business Influencers. If you're just joining us and new to Business Influencers, you can find us here on TALRadio.org. Also on Spotify and Apple at Business Influencers. We are so excited that each and every week the show continues to grow by leaps and bounds because of you, the listeners, and we are committed each and every week to bringing in new subject matter experts, helping you to raise your level of influence and taking your business to the next level. All of our guests that share from experience, from their personal wisdom, and again, talk about the things that are necessary to move along in the solution rather than the problem. Today's show is being brought to you today by Biz Explosion Systems Conferences. They are a group that put on conferences throughout the area of the United States, including this next one coming up in Denver. And this one is going to be a great show. It's called the Achieve Biz Explosion Conference, June 9th and the 10th in Denver, Colorado. It will be bringing in entrepreneurs from all around the country. And this is an opportunity where you can absolutely generate business, because I've been there before, and it is an incredible event with incredible people. I also happen to be keynoting that event, so we love to have you there. If you'd like some more information on this event, you can go to achievebizconferences.com. That is achievebizconferences.com. Well, we're going to have a great show. We're going to be talking today with Nuala Naughton. And before I introduce you to her, I want to give you a little bit of background. She's a multi-award winning journalist and voiceover, author, lecturer, editor, mentor, podcaster. She's been a senior broadcast journalist with the Coin Republic global news channel, featuring experts in NFTs, Web3, blockchain, Metaverse. She's a political publicist for Peace Warrior and a presidential candidate, Sid McNary. She also is a publicist for a public speaking platform called Jane Talks, a stage for the rest of us. And her superpowers are publishing, free publicity, voiceover. Her mantra, the impact of words lies less in what is said and how it's heard. And again, she's an author of books called Barrowland, a Glasgow experience by Mainstream Random House, and then Glasgow's East End, from bishops to bar boys, also with Mainstream Random House. And without further ado, we welcome Nuala Naughton to the show. Nuala, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Chris.
Well, we are so excited to have you here. And we're going to be doing something for the first time that has never been done here on Business Influencers. So surprise, everybody, those that are listening live, those that will be listening later, also here on our YouTube channel. This is a podcast takeover. I am not going to be the host of today's show. Nuala is going to be the host of today's show, and she'll be interviewing me. Who would have thought I would be now a guest on my own show? Well, here we are, and it's going to happen. So with that being said, Nuala, take it away. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. I know that's a key thing that you talk about in terms of fixing business problems, getting to the root cause of what's wrong in a business, or why it's not moving forward. Why is emotional intelligence so important, and what exactly is that anyway?
Well, it's a great question, and I do this talk all the time. And a lot of times people ask, emotional intelligence, but first of all, let's look at it from what Wikipedia says. So Wikipedia says it's the most defined as the ability to perceive, use, understand, and manage and handle emotions. So in order for someone to really effectively use emotional intelligence in business, meaning understanding other people's emotions, you first have to have the ability to understand your own. Because if you can't understand your own emotions or know how to control them and then use them in a positive way to then address situations and other people with their emotions and how, in this case, how they react to situations, then we're not going to be as effective. So the key to emotional intelligence is learning how to activate it and then elevate it. And the first thing to do is to kind of look at your own emotions. So the thing is, when you look at emotional intelligence, you have to ask yourself, honestly, when you are faced with difficult situations or typical challenges or situations that happen every day, certain triggers that happen every day, people that you interact with, the question is, are you reacting to those situations and people, or are you responding? There's a big difference. Now, typically when we react, we are reacting out of impulse from that primary emotion. So if something triggers anger or frustration or feeling overwhelmed or feeling jealous or envious, many times we are going to react immediately from that emotion. Now, you got to ask yourself, is that going to help the situation? Well, when you look at it from a third-party perspective in hindsight, probably not. But here's the reality. We can control those emotions. Now, if something triggers anger in you, we'll use that as an example since it's a common negative emotion. Yes, that is your emotion. You have to honor that. You're not negating it. You're not sweeping it under the cover. It's okay that you're angry. The question is, you don't have to react from it to that situation in that given moment. You can pause and say to yourself, what can I control in this situation? What can I not control? I'm angry. I will deal with it in due time, but I'm going to choose to respond favorably to the situation or person or people in a positive way from a secondary emotion. Now, that doesn't mean you have to pause and then respond immediately from that. You may have to remove yourself from the situation for 10 minutes. Maybe you have to sleep on it for the evening and then come in the next day before you respond or reply back to an email. Many times because we react, we just escalate the problem and so on. But if we have the ability to learn how to pause and say, oh, I'm going to respond now from a positive emotion, then I can deal with the negative emotion in due time. And, when I create that time to do that. But by doing that, by responding, we are now able to neutralize those bad situations and figure out how can we solve a problem then to create a solution. So what I would like to do, Nuala, is talk about what are some ways we can go about doing that. If you'd like to ask me, I'd be more than happy to share that with everybody.
Well, first of all, a lot of times in a crisis moment, we don't really have time to sit back and go, well, hold on a minute, how am I really feeling about this? So how do you learn how to immediately switch on this emotional maturity, really?
Well, again, it's, learning to understand what you can control, what you cannot control, which I'm going to explain here later, soon. But it's also the ability to be present. See, fear cannot reside in the present moment. It's reduced. Fear thrives in the past and the future. So when our minds are in the past, we're attaching ourselves to self-limiting beliefs from our childhood that get triggered by certain situations or people in the moment. And then we project that into the future, and then we tell ourselves all these things that are going to happen that haven't even actually happened. That's where fear thrives. Now, when you have those situations where you have to make a decision quickly, you don't have time to reflect. It's just as, again, in that split second, what can I control? What can I not control? But when we can learn to be present, and the way to learn to be present is by having a daily routine. That can be through meditation, journaling, getting up at a certain time, making your bed, reading, taking a cold shower, working out. Any combination of those habits or disciplines that serve you will help you to learn how to keep your mind in the moment or shift back into the moment where fear is reduced, then to make those decisions in those difficult times very quickly. So I like, go ahead, because I want to get back to what we could control and what we cannot control, but please.
Well, that kind of is my question. I mean, can emotional intelligence be learned without addressing maybe some of the triggers that are coming from your past? you talk about getting to the root cause.
Yeah,
of
it's
things.
just something that happens subconsciously. It's right now in the moment that whatever is triggered that emotion is what you're now what you're reacting to instead of responding. So the key is to understand that when we react, it's oftentimes fueled by something that has happened to you in the past during your child development years. I'll give you an example. You are driving your car and somebody cuts you off and you go into a rage and you're cursing and you're following that car and you're beeping the horn, you're taunting that driver for what they did to you. Now, was it really the driver that really just got you all boiled up and fueled that anger? That was a trigger. It's something deeper than that that goes way back to your childhood that has not been addressed or not addressed enough. That anger is there, and it's been there for a long time. It just gets triggered, just like, you know, a volcano can be activated at any time and explode, just like how we can explode. But we can learn how to control that when we learn how to control our emotions. And that is having a daily routine repetitively every day, doing something that's going to allow your mind to be in the moment. Meditation and journaling are the best to do in order to do that. Now, you can put other things, working out, walking, reading. But when you do that 7 days a week, 365 days a year, year after year after year, you build up a new way of thinking. And then you learn that your emotions do not control you. You control your emotions. Now, there are 5 things that we can control each and every day as human beings. We can control our communication to ourselves and others. That is how we, talk to ourselves, from our inner critic or our inner champion. It's also how we talk to other people. Now, we may think that we can, if we're listening to our inner critic and our limiting beliefs, that we can still hide it and people won't know that we're operating from that. We think that, but we are still communicating not in a favorable way. Many people communicate that communicate to others are passive or aggressive communicators. Passive means they say yes to everybody. They're yes people. And they will go out of their way to please and enable others because they're seeking some form of validation that they didn't get growing up. That's a limiting belief to fill that black space inside of them. So yes, people tend to please and enable. They take on too many things fall through the cracks, and they end up disappointing the people that they're trying to please and enable. And they keep those people stuck. That is a codependent form of communication. Aggressive people tend to be perfectionists, or that no one can do it better than them. They have a hard time receiving help, or they demand too much help, and they don't respect the rights and responsibilities of the receiver of the communication, and thus can come across as condescending and demanding. And again, their expectations often not go unfulfilled, not only from the other person, but from themselves. And they can be, again, another form of codependency. But when we can learn to be in the moment, we can be assertive in our communication. Assertive is an interdependent trait. We can be specific, clear, and concise with our communication to ourselves, knowing what we're good at, what we're not good at, being transparent, being vulnerable, and being specific, clear, and concise to another person or people. And then by doing that, we have the ability now to reduce the assumption and speculation in that communication, because most communication is based on assumption and speculation. This is why we have miscommunication, misperception, why we have issues like divorce, why we have partnerships that dissolve, why we have customers that leave their client, the people that they're buying products and service from. All go back down to communication. We can control that and get better at it, get better at being active listeners. Whether if you're the sender or the receiver of the communication, you are responsible for being specific, clear, and concise, always. Our behavior in alignment with our communication, either being codependent, passive, aggressive, or both, or assertive, being interdependent. So oftentimes is our behavior in alignment with our communication. That's another thing. Then next is our attitude. Is it happening for you, not to you? Big difference. When it's happening for you, you see the challenges and the obstacles as opportunities to grow. We only grow and expand through challenges. That's what resiliency is about. When it's happening to you, you're the victim. You're pointing the finger at everyone else. You're avoiding the challenge. You're resisting the change in the challenge, and you're stagnating yourself. Number 4 is our emotions. We can control our emotions. They're happening. Again, we're responding versus reacting to them. And number 5 is our action. We can control those 5 things. The same 5 things we cannot control in other people. But unfortunately, most people get caught up in controlling those same 5 things in other people. And that's why they experience anxiety, worry, frustration, overwhelmness, stress, angry, eventually left unchecked, affects their moods over time. They can become depressed. Emotional intelligence recognizes in every situation over time, when practiced through a daily routine, maybe a gratitude list every evening before you go to bed. This is how we can focus on what we can control, letting go of what we can't. And we're able to stretch ourselves and embrace challenges, address problems to create solutions. So that is some of the things that, no matter if you're a leader in a business, in a company, in your household, in your community, when you can learn to master that and get better at it each and every day, you will raise your level of EQ and be able to be able to relate and understand people better, build better rapport, make people feel comfortable to want to talk more, to reveal what's getting in their way or what's important to them. And this can lead to more sales in your business. Revenue acceleration can lead to higher team engagement, higher retention. It can lead to less, tasks falling through the cracks because the communication is elevated. And then we begin to connect more on shared values to really create a more valuable customer experience as a result of what's going on within that company, organization, or whatever that may be.
Okay, so if you recognize emotional intelligence as important as it is in terms of raising the bottom line, and you understand that there are certain things that trigger you. So to an extent, that's emotional intelligence in itself, is recognizing where you have failings. That's all very well if you recognize that and are prepared to embrace it. But what if you're not? We all like to think we're already emotionally intelligent. So, for example, how would you address a customer or a boss when you're saying, "I don't think you're emotionally intelligent enough"?
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to listen to what they say. Doesn't mean I have to agree, but again, there's no right or wrong here. It's to look at, like, well, why did they feel that way? Ask further questions. See, a person who is emotionally intelligent understands the power is in asking questions, not defending yourself or doing the talking. Ask a question. So can you explain why you would feel like that I'm not emotionally intelligent? And then they would say something. And then when they say something, I follow up with another question. So what do you mean by that? And why would that show that someone's not emotionally intelligent? So by doing that, it's about getting to where it's not to prove that they're wrong. It's to show that where is the misunderstanding, or where maybe they're right, completely. And then I got to see that. But you get to the root cause of what is getting in the way to find out where can we find mutual ground through that shared value or values to agree on something that we can now agree on and move forward to resolve a problem, instead of just debating and then nothing gets solved, and it's just constant friction, and then eventually can lead to conflict, And then conflict leads to a toxic environment long term.
So, right. So once you know the rules, are there occasions when you intelligently can break those rules? In other words, everyone expects me to be really calm in a situation, but things aren't happening that should happen. Therefore, I'm going to throw an angry fit just to let people know this is important. Is that a possibility where you can break the rules and have a strop?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not here. There's no right or wrong. I mean, the way I would approach those situations is to look at what is versus what you think it should be.
Okay.
See, when you focus on what you think it should be, you're caught up in the control you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going, and what is the result of that? Usually disappointment. Because they're going to be expectations they're going to go unfulfilled because you're caught up in thinking what it should be. And then somebody else might look at it in a different way. And then there's this conflict. There's a disagreement. There's frustration versus how do we look at this for what it is? And what can we do together that we can control with what is and maximize it? Letting go of anything else beyond our control. We adapt to the situation. So that's how I would address something like that. So that way it would prevent me or someone else, hopefully, that, again, I can't control their emotions. I can only control my own, that I'm not going to respond in an angry way. Now, am I saying this stuff is easy to do? No. We're human beings. We're going to have our moments. But if we can learn by raising our level of emotional intelligence each and every day, there's no graduation, there's no certificate, there's no level, it's ongoing. It's a journey. But when you build this up, when it compounds over time, you get stronger, you get mentally tough, and you're able to now take on challenges in a completely different way than you've done before. And these are what great leaders do. Great leaders embrace challenges. They see them as opportunities. They don't resist a change. They don't resist to adapt to situations. They look at things as what is rather than what they think it should be.
So can you give me an example of when you thought, yeah, that worked, I did that right,
Well, I mean, this happens every day in business that we are expected, because I don't even like that word expected. As a matter of fact, it's not even part of my vocabulary, but unfortunately, 99% of the world uses that word almost in every other sentence. I expect, you expect, we expect, but think about expectations. It's caught up in the control you can't control. It operates from fear and oftentimes goes unfulfilled. And we get caught up in the things we can't control. So we waste a lot of energy, a lot of time. We're busy and not productive. We avoid change because it's scary. We play it safe because we don't want to be looked upon as incompetent or stupid or dumb. But if we learn, emotional intelligence is about, again, being present and looking and operating from intentions in the moment, not expectations in the past and the future. We focus on what we can control. We trust the process, and knowing the results we seek will be a byproduct of what from our intentions, maximizing what we could control in the moment and adapting to what is to bring out the best. That's what I do. So, but the way I look at things is if I know somebody's breathing down my back and says, we have a deadline by Friday. Okay, got a deadline by Friday. I could be hung up on the Friday deadline. I know that. But something could happen. Somebody that, again, outside of our control could throw something in the middle. Now that's going to delay that process. The people that required a Friday are not happy. I can't control. All I can say is that we are doing everything in our power. And I'm documenting everything that we're doing that in our control to do what we have to do. This is going to happen. I'm sorry it's not going to be on Friday. But if I get caught up in all the things I can't control, that's not going to help this situation. You could worry to the, to the end of time, and it's not going to serve you any good. It's just going to just be bad for your well-being overall. Now, it's easy to say, to do is another, but when we learn how to do this, we can learn to adapt to these situations. We can communicate in a much higher way using active listening, and realize that customers might now say, well, you do understand me. You do get me. I believe you because I trust you that this thing, why we can't make it on a Friday deadline, is that you're doing everything you can. They're more likely to be a little bit more understanding versus when we try to, stretch the truth and, oh, it's this person that they got in the way, and we put up, we gossip and complain and put, and point the finger at other situations. That just aggravates the client or someone that task was important to accomplish for. So it's better, it's again, being honest, straightforward, and maximizing what you can with what is, and communicating that in a specific, clear, and concise way through the different channels that the people that are on the other end are going to be able to understand and process for themselves. So those are the things that EQ could do. And this is the difference between organizations that play at this level versus the ones that play at this level. And the ones that have lower levels of EQ play here, the ones that play up here. And there's no coincidences why those companies are always ranked in the top 5 for customer service year after year after year. One perfect example is Zappos, because they operate from that type of culture and environment, and they've been doing that since day one.
So if you have a team, right, and they're all different personalities, and they operate on different levels of pressure. Some people like that; they like a deadline, almost like to be late for a deadline because it puts it on. So where would you, as a boss, go to be sure that, like, for your team, to be sure that you're going to be getting the right kind of coaching in emotional intelligence, apart from you?
Well, yeah, you can't tell people what to do. You can only share. And the best teacher of emotional intelligence is being the example of it and being a resource to help people do for themselves.
Right.
So it's creating the awareness, creating resources for people to help themselves, you being the consistent example of that so people can observe that in you. And then sharing with people that, hey, you're notoriously late all the time. You're always an hour late. You always miss deadlines. Now, I can't speculate and assume, but oftentimes research says that that's a control issue. You may have a control issue. Where that comes from, who knows? It's something deeply rooted from your childhood. Now, I can't fix that. Nobody can fix that. Only you can. But by providing resources that help people to help themselves, then we can begin to learn how we can work together interdependently to overcome these weaknesses, to get better at them, but yet focus on the things that we're really good at. Now, if somebody is not willing to do the work or do the things necessary because they're always late, and you've exhausted almost every resource to help them, then perhaps it's time for them to move on, and it's time for them to go, and you let them go. That's just part of life.
What about if the person who's late all the time comes up with all the best ideas, gets to the heart of something?
Well, again, it comes down to, it depends on how you structure your culture. If you structure your culture to say, we are going to leverage our strengths and offset our weaknesses. Now, we would love everybody to be here at a certain time, but we recognize some people just, for some reason, don't do a good job of doing that. But maybe that's a weakness. Now, we're not giving that as an excuse, but if there is a strength that you can maximize that benefits you and the team and our situation, then we can discuss where we can find some harmony there. So it doesn't mean because that person's always late, that means, oh, I guess I can be late now. No, because your strength is being on time and you're a great team player. We're going to overlook some of the other weak areas that you have and not expose those in our team environment. So we're looking for ways to leverage strengths, offset weaknesses to move forward. And I know we just have a few more minutes in the show, but yeah, I just thought that might help you.
I think it's wonderful. I think that's very incisive. I'm just wondering how you would deal with resentment, for example, when there is a prima donna, but they're a brilliant prima donna.
With the prima donna, it's really getting to really listen, to relate, and understand where they are, find out what's really important to them. Oftentimes, prima donnas have to put on this act because for some reason they feel they have to be heard, and they feel on some level they're not being heard. So they have to be loud and abrupt and cause a scene to feel like they're being heard. But if they really are heard on an emotional intelligence level, you can begin to get to where the root cause is of what might be causing them to do that. What's really important to, and then maybe to figure out that what they're doing is getting in their way. It's causing a rift in certain relationships, and and causing adversarial relationships rather than collaborative ones. So these are the things that when we can be active listeners and really listen to relate and understand before we respond and get to really what's important to them by building that rapport, these are the things that will help us to get beyond that. Not saying it always works, but it's better.
Okay, so I have one more question.
Sure.
One last question, as Columbo would say. Are you emotionally intelligent?
I feel that I am emotionally intelligent. I've been studying this area for quite some time. I mean, even going back to when Daniel Goleman had started this, when he put out his book in this particular subject matter back in the 90s. And I've been meditating and journaling and have a daily routine I've had for almost 25 years, been doing that, never missed a day. And I've committed my life to this particular area. It's the foundation of everything that I do as a business acceleration strategist, as a business executive coach, running businesses in my prior career, and so on. How we think will impact our level of confidence, our level of self-esteem, how we communicate to ourselves and others, how we make decisions, take risks, follow through with massive action, all of the above. Again, the 5 things we can control, we talked about earlier. These are the things that are going to help people move forward in any business. And when we can be the example of that and be a resource for others to do the same, it could be like magic. Does it always work, in a set period of time? Not necessarily, but it's better than any other type of format that I found that, just manages the problem. We here at Business Influencers are about sustainable solutions to move forward. So,
well, Christopher Salem, thank you very much for being part of my podcast Takeover.
well, Nuala, thank you so much. You were wonderful today and being a host, and really asked some thought-provoking questions. And we want to thank you personally for being here with Business Influencers. And we highly encourage everybody to get to know Nuala. And Nuala, if you could briefly share before we close the show, how can people get to know you? Because you do this so well. And I'm sure maybe somebody else would love to have you do a podcast takeover on their podcast or radio show, amongst the other things that you do at a high level.
Well, it would be very emotionally mature of me to say I can run off all my socials in a wonder, but I just can't remember them all. So, if you can spell my name, you can find me on socials. And the best place to contact me is from my email, which is story@newsandfeatures.scot.
Got it. And we'll make sure that everybody, that will be in the show notes as well. And we highly encourage you to reach out to Nuala, get to know her. She's also on Clubhouse as well. And we were so excited to have you here today. And thank you for being here. And thank you for an opportunity where I got to be a guest on my own show. We've never done that before. So this was a whole new thing.
Well, it worked, thankfully. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we highly encourage everybody, again, to check out Biz Explosion conferences at achievebizconferences.com. Again, that's BIZ, achievebizconferences.com. I will guarantee you, if you attend this event, you will walk away a very happy person. There are going to be quite a few people there. They have a speed networking function there. There is a lot of business that gets done there. And this is a great opportunity to not only meet great people and build your network, but also walk away with new business. Check them out again at the Achieve Biz Explosion Conference, June 9th and the 10th. And I'll see you there as well, since I'm doing a keynote. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week.